I basically started getting sick about, I think it was about 4 or 5 months ago, and I didn't know what was wrong with me. I was sweating all the time, my heart was doing loops, and one day my body just shut down. So I went into the ER to find out what was going on with me, and they put the shoulder holster on and everything, and they said wear this for a week to see what's going on. They couldn't find anything wrong with my heart when they looked at it just by doing the EKG and all that. And the shoulder holster showed some anomalies over the week, sleep patterns and the heart rate going up, going down, spasming. And so when I went back in, they took all the readings and they wanted to take a look at my heart. So I had a CAT scan and they looked at my heart and they said what I had was an aortic tear. Basically, it was a laceration that was becoming a tear. So what had happened was something was happening to my heart as my heart was going. One of the veins around the heart was opening up. It had a small laceration on it, and it was just starting to open up like a chasm. If it opens up, that's it. It's what's called the deathly trickle, and you die. So, I was in a very bad way. What I needed to do was get surgery for that. So, at the time, I couldn't work, I couldn't do anything. Most of my day compiled in staying in bed and sweating. That's all I did. Going to the bathroom was horrible because going to the bathroom aggravates the heart, which a lot of people don't know, but yeah, number one is fine. Number two, that's really, really stressful on the heart because it aggravates the vagus nerve. And so every little thing that I did, if I got up too quickly, my heart, I had palpitations. Just laying in bed, not dehydrating, gave me palpitations. I was in a really bad way. Fortunately, James Rink set up a donation fund for me. I was able to start getting some money flowing in and aid. I had some water and some other things that people had sent me to try and improve my health. And at that point, I was desperate. I tried anything. I managed to scramble enough money together from donations to actually have surgery with one of the doctors that did the procedure unlisted. He took it off his own back. We did the procedure. There was a 50-50 chance of survival, and the procedure worked. Fortunately, it did leave me with a lot of other ailments. I still have problems with my heart. My heart rate is still not 100%. I have problems with my liver and my kidneys. They're slowly getting themselves back to 100%. The fact that my blood pressure is high isn't good because I have to take the blood pressure medicine, and that puts more stress on the kidneys and the liver, especially the liver. So anybody that takes blood pressure medicine knows that. But the rate of my blood pressure being so high, naturally in resting it's 210 over 90. So it's extremely high. So I have to take the meds, otherwise I'm just going to stroke out very quickly. So, with a lot of good people around me and a very big support base, which I had, thanks to James and some other people, I was able to pull myself up. I had a lot of friends that looked after me, Dawn Hart, she looked after me, Haley Meyer, Haley Casbo, she did a lot to help as well. So there are a lot of people that actually pulled together. But I want to just say thank you to James, because he was the instigator. Without James Ring, I wouldn't be here today. That's what the bottom line.
Well, yeah, and I just want to say, if it wasn't for all the people that contributed, I was just a catalyst to enable him to still be here. But it was really the group effort, and I just want to say thank you for helping out. And of course, thank you for choosing to stay alive here.
Sure.
So, did you want to go talk a little bit about Michael Prince? Because
James Casbo.
He has been, there's so much controversy about what's going on with him lately. And first of all, where is he now?
From everything I've heard, he's in jail. He's in prison. He's in Exeter prison. getting introduced to some very lovely people in there that I know quite well, and becoming rather intimate with them. And the thing with James Casbolt, from everything that started off, everything sort of spawned from this list. He had this list of mind control people, and the list of mind control people were all people that disagreed with him, people that didn't like his views, didn't like the things he had to say. He would do an interview with somebody like Kerry Cassidy, and then boom, that person would be droned, as he called it. So they'd be put on his drone list. And he did say that I was in great danger, and I don't know what to say about that, because when I had the heart surgery, they pulled a shard of metal out about this big out of my aorta, and I don't know if that was a fletchet from a round that had got in me. I do have a scar right here, but it could also be part of a utensil that when I was shot a few years ago, that was also left inside me, part of something that chipped off, but I find that very hard to believe. So, when it comes to James Casbolt, he put out a lot of information in the beginning that a lot of people thought was noteworthy. A lot of his information I thought was good in the beginning. He dropped a lot of names. He had a lot of good places. He was charismatic. He is charismatic. You can't deny that people like him. Okay? There's something about him. He is calm. He's always in control, no matter what's going on. He's very charismatic in that retrospect. But also, some of the stuff that comes out of his mouth and some of the stuff that he talks about is very controversial. Not only is it controversial, but it borderlines, I would say, lunacy. The fact that he was shot in the head, and now he's okay. I've said it time and time again. If the powers that be are going to create a hitman or an assassin, the ideal rule of thumb is not to give that assassin all the information. I mean, if you've got an assassin that's going in to do a dangerous job and eliminate people, the only information they should have is the target they're eliminating, and maybe as to why. But that's it. Any other information is too much information, and it's avoided. So the whole idea of him being this big priest, Jesuit priest, plus a super soldier, plus an assassin, plus now a spy, it just doesn't add up. It doesn't add up at all. It borderlines into lunacy. And we have enough lunatics in the truth movement today. We don't need another one. And we don't need one that's going around threatening women, taking pictures of women, having pictures sent to him, and then putting them all over the internet. And then what he did to his wife as well, that was unforgivable. He threatened to kill many people. He stalked and harassed many of my friends, and attacked many people for no reason, just for the fact that they disagreed with what he said. So if anybody wants a little insight into reincarnation, there you have it. Because Stalin has been reincarnated as Michael Prince. But so there's lots of different scenarios floating around out there. There are people saying that he was a clone, that it's not, that Michael Prince and James Casbolt are two different people. Personally, I believe that Michael Prince and James Casbolt are the same person. I think the biggest problem that James Casbolt has is he kind of fell in love with his own fantasy. I think that he's a serial fantasist, and I think the problem with everything that happened was, as the story progressed, he got bigger, he got into steroids, he got very unhinged. To be able to do things like that, you have to have your mental house in order. He definitely didn't have his mental house in order, and everything unraveled for him when he split up with his wife. And I think that, insanity, all it takes is a little push, as they say, correct? So that was his little push when everything went down with his wife. And I don't want to talk about that. I don't know how much of that I can talk about, but that was the catalyst that put him over the edge. That's when he started sending death threats. He was really basically off the chain. He always was teetering on the edge with some of his posts and some of his personal posts that I had correspondence with him. But that was just definitely the breaking point. That was when it was too much for him. He was going back to the UK. He was already in trouble for the things that he had done. And I think that he just felt that it was better to, death or glory. And he was really in a kamikaze state of mind. And he's still in that state of mind. I don't think he really cares what happens to him. But I think that he had an emotional break. And that's really how it's come to pass. He's not the man that he was. Everybody that's seen my Project Camelot video with Kerry Cassidy knows that in around 2005 I have two guides, as I call them, two greys, John and James, always coming to us. And they, at the time I was very sick, I had cancer, everything's documented, and it was pancreatic cancer, and it wasn't to the point where I was terminal. I was just very sick at that point. I just started chemo and everything, and these two beings have come into my life, and they directed me to a lake, not unlike this one at all. And it was just after a storm. I remember it had stormed really badly, and they pointed me towards the edge of the bank, and they said, "Don't be afraid." And as I walked towards the edge of the bank, this being was walking towards me. The only way I can describe the feeling at the time is, I don't know if anybody's ever is into spiritualism and they've ever tried to reach out to their spirit guide and they've used the palm tree technique. It was that kind of experience, the reaching out mentally to the guide and have the guide reaching out back as it steps out from underneath the shape. That was the same sort of experience, except with this one there was an element of fear that just washed over me. And I have no shame in saying I was terrified at that point. I had never been more scared in my entire life. And this being came up to me. He was at least 7 foot, 7'1", 7'2". He was immense. And I remember when John and James talked to me, the information is there in my head. They speak my language, I can hear it clearly. And the answers just boom, 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 boom. When this being spoke to me, it was like nails on a chalkboard. It was painful. It was like somebody rattling a bucket inside my brain. I didn't understand what was said, and it was painful to experience it. And as he stopped talking to me, he just glared at me, reached out his arm and grabbed my arm. It was this arm. And then he started to squeeze the life out of my arm. I could feel the bones in my arm breaking. And he broke my arm in 2 places. And after that, I did feel very different. My eyes changed in a matter of weeks. My health improved. I went back to the doctor. They performed tests, and I was in complete remission at that point in time, in a very short space of time. And anybody that's familiar with the Heather material, the interview, knows this story because I had already put it on camera for Kerry Cassidy. And that was my first experience with a reptilian being. And there have been more since then. Since then, more of the language has become more familiar to me. It's not as painful as it has been, but I've had about 30 to 40 interactions. Got to understand somewhat of the species and understand their thinking, not so much their motives, but definitely their thinking. So it's definitely what I believe is bridging the gap.
You also mentioned to me earlier that when this being held your arm, that you actually had some scales came off of it.
Right.
Do you have a picture of that scale?
I don't. I had pictures that I gave to Kerry Cassidy. I had scales. I had the scale that I gave to Kerry Cassidy.
And that was sent off for DNA testing?
That was sent off for DNA testing.
And what was the results?
The results were inconclusive. It was definitely of reptilian origin. but it was not of any origin that they had found. They said the being that it mostly resembled was that of a geckos, but a very, very large geckos.
Okay, and can you explain who John and James is?
Okay, John and James. John and James are what I call my two guides. Okay, I believe that people have spirit guides. I'm a very spiritualistic person. I believe in that 100%. I don't always believe that everybody has guides that are human. I don't believe spirituality works that way. I believe that, the Indians used to believe they had animal guides. Same is said for people of certain origins. They can have extraterrestrial guides. And for me, John and James have always been, now that I look at it, a key point in my life, coming back, reoccurring. Shadows in the darkness as a child. Always two images. There was a toy when I was a baby that used to jump up and scare me. It didn't scare me, but it was something that would never happen. It didn't happen on its own. Something manipulated that. When I first came in contact with John and James, I wasn't afraid. And they are two greys, what I call snub-nosed greys. They're organic, they're not Tao, they're not dimensional observational workers. They are greys, genetic greys in every way, shape or form. They're not pinky, they don't wear a spacesuit, they are chlorophyll-based life forms. They have the big eyes, very small mouths, they can't use their mouths, they can't eat their mouths. Their mouths are remnants of what they used to be, species long since what they were, And the same thing, John and James, from what they explained to me, used to be fine. The greys, or certain aspects of the greys, are they're searching for spiritual individuality. They don't have that. A lot of them are wrapped up in this collective. They can't break away. They think that they live pretty much forever. Their food sources and their organs they can be manufactured. And just like Bob Dean says, they get these guys off an assembly line. So they're disposable people to the hierarchy that control them. And they are controlled by reptilians, they are controlled by the insectoids, and so on and so forth. Even the Nordics have grey workers. They're the average workers in the fair for everybody else. There was a remote viewer in John and James's craft. They managed to survive. They were dropped off. The other three that were going to a safe location that was part of their little collective that had broke away from part of the Tao, they were in contact with a remote viewer that worked for the Department of Defense. And what they told the remote viewer was there was a package on board their craft. And the package was a bomb. And they couldn't slow down, they couldn't get rid of the bomb. In other words, one of the hierarchy had found out what they were trying to do, and they had scuppered their ship, basically. They basically turned it into a speed scenario. They couldn't stop flying or they were going to explode. That remote viewer was trying to talk them down, and he made notes of everything. And he gave these notes to a guy called Jay Axelrod. And the remote viewer's name was Indo Swan. And just before he was able to clarify what these beings were, the ship was destroyed and the three were killed. And the only ones left were John and James. And John and James assigned themselves to myself. Why? I don't know. There's plenty of people that have grey guides. There are hundreds of people that have grey guides. People sometimes think abductions are my labs. Not all abductions are my labs. Some abductions are just abductions. And some are just them reaching out, letting you know they see you, just like a bear in the wild. Let them know you see them. Let them know that you see them. And it's the same principle. And all of the insight about human nature I got from John and James. Every concept when it comes to the fact that I don't see good or evil, it's one side to the same coin. It's all about the nature of beings. what I believe are there are some reptilians that just like human beings have positive and negative elements about them, and they're in and out of balance. So some do things for positive reasons, some do things for negative reasons. Some are controlled, just like a soldier is told to go and let's take the example of the Indians. Okay, the Indians were slaughtered, especially around this area. You had the Blackfoot tribes. They were told that they were parties to raids that never happened. So they had the colonials go in and destroy and wipe out the Indian settlements. And the soldiers were told to do that, and the soldiers had in their mind, these guys killed all these people. It never happened. But in their mind, they're doing the right thing. So it's the same thing. Now, if you have a man stood here and an ant walks by and the man chooses to step on the ant, nobody blinks. In some cases, the man doesn't even see the ant. And that is another disrespect. That's not to say human beings are ants, but it is to say some reptilians perceive us as ants. Some perceive us as food. Some perceive us as royalty. Some perceive us as something that should be interbred with, brought into the fold, used to create another lineage. So there's lots of different games going on, which is surrounded by this one big game of control. It doesn't matter what game's being played, the fact is they do control us. And that's the most important thing. We're never going to be free, we're never going to have freedom, as long as these beings have this frame of mind. And unfortunately, the human frame of mind, when it comes to greed, power, racial tensions and things like that, that is inbred because we have more reptilian DNA than we have anything else. Anunnaki, we have reptilian cores of our brains, they are complex. We are, in a sense. We talk about reptilian hybrids, most of us are reptilian hybrids. It just depends on what percentage. When the initial heather material was released, it was decided with the three of us that the material was so sensitive that the way we wanted to play it was Bill Ryan was going to naysay it, call it a hoax, and Kerry Cassidy was going to support it, and then I was going to be in the middle. Now I understood that I was going to take a lot of flack for that, but that was the hand that was dealt. To actually take on board the material was something that I made a choice, and it was my decision anyway. The reason why we chose to go down that path is very simple. It's because we believed that the message was sent out as a message, decoded message, to certain people and certain people only. So not everybody was going to get the message, not everybody was going to understand the message, but it was important enough that the message was sent out. So that's why we came up with the whole, one person was going to support it, one person was going to not support it and challenge it, and then everybody else was going to be left to make up their own decision. It didn't matter. What mattered was the information was out there, and the people that needed it had that information. Now, along with other documents, there were certain things that were not released with Project Camelot and the heather material. One was Dr. Schrunger's diary, the diary of the MILAB victims that were abducted, taken into an experimentation type. With Project Camelot, there was a lot of undocumented material that was not put out. We felt it was too sensitive to put out at the time, and some of it wasn't released. One item of which was Dr. Robert Schunger, who was taking victims, MILAB victims, and he was placing them into test conditions, and they were people with a certain anomaly, pyrokinetics, basically, people that could manipulate sources of heat. They couldn't create fire, but they could manipulate the fire and heat within people, within circuitry, within buildings, where they could flash it up in an instant, create devastating heat by mixing chemicals and gases in the stomach, creating what appears to be spontaneous combustion, and then boom, that's gone. once that spontaneous combustion is over with, there's not much left. So they were trying to use this and harness this as a weapon. They were working hand in hand with Merck being the pharmaceutical company, to try and progress and further this ability. They wanted to have a remote viewer that could do this at given range, and they had a number of candidates that they used. They had a number of candidates that they used and being attacked by a swan. He's cool. He's cool. So they were using these pharmaceutical techniques to try to actually do. Really? Oi,
My jeans don't taste so good.
do I need to take you out? Hey, it's got the big neck. I think I can choke you. That's right.
So it's
Has anybody ever seen a Doris choke put on a swan? If you might, you put it on there. So, the pharmaceutical company Merck, they were working with Dr. Shunger at the time, and they were trying to progress and further the abilities of these remote viewers / pyrokinetics. And what they were trying to do was they were kind of trying to create these guys to do their work at distance. So they didn't have to be at the location for them to be able to create the assassination or create the fire, the distraction. There's many various tools this could be used for. And they had a number of different victims, which is what they were at the time. I'm in contact with one. And the problem they had was they had three victims at the time that were basically uncontrollable. They had one that excelled in what he did. He was very ahead of himself. He could do it at range before he took the medication. And he decided to take the other three, and before they were carried off into other black projects, they decided they were going to make a break for it, and they burned down the facility. As far as I know, they burned up Dr. Shunger, and they got out of that situation. So once that happened, the Dr. Shunger's diary went black until it fell into the hands of Heather Anderson. After that happened, it got passed to me along with the rest of the information. The rest is history. There was other information that was put out there, Project Medusa, on another document that I was handed, and it was, from what I gather, a Stargate that had opened up in the Gulf of Aden, and the special forces at the time were conducting missile tests into it to see what happened. Basically just to fire and forget, see how it worked, see what would happen, using Hellfire rockets and other variant types. This information is very similar to the information that Aaron McCullum came out with, and this information predated Aaron McCullum. One of the other documents that was handed to me was a Merck document, and Merck handled all kind of virals and pathogens. They're a pharmaceutical company that handle 99.9% of all your H1N1 inoculations, and anytime you get vaccinated, it's usually a Merck vaccine. Sorry, I'm still looking at the camera. So it's usually a Merck vaccine that you get inoculated by. Okay, these guys have this new disease that they brought back from someplace. There were words like OP, off planet, OW, off world, and they have instructions on how to use this viral strain and how to guard against this viral strain in use with people that are from this planet and people that are from off-world, people that are off-world and pregnant. So there's many different variants. It's something they definitely have. It's been described on the document itself as a form of Mars measles, using the Latin names that are given to measles and things like that. So from what I've been told, that's all above board and legitimate, and it's been signed by at that time it was the CEO of Mike. One of the other documents that I was handed was the NHCU Field Battalion Manual. Now, the Marines have a Field Battalion Manual, so do the Rangers, Special Forces, and the Army. All that is commonplace. And these guys, the non-human cybernetic units, also have their own field manual of how they're supposed to conduct business. They're essentially shock troops. They go in, they hit hard, they get the job done, then they get out. And that's basically what the field manual is explaining, word for word. Not to leave anybody behind, not to leave any remains behind. And that basically is like their Bible. That's the NHCU Bible, just like the Rangers have their Bible, just like the squaddies in England have their Bible. It's the same thing. These guys, even though they're non-human cybernetic units, they still have their Bible that they draw from and that they read and that they're supposed to follow. So and even though they're not human beings as we would say, they still follow orders. So that must mean if they have a field manual, they must read something. So it makes you ask the question, how much of them is left of them is human if they have to actually read and not download information. It's a moral question. One thing that was put to me when I released the Heather material, one of my ace in the bag was about 30 CDs that Heather Anderson had actually procured from the HD Sigville. And these CDs I have now handed over to James Ring. Should I say that? Should I tell you? I've now handed these CDs over to James Ring for him to decode in any way he sees fit, and to put out in any way he sees fit. I never put these CDs out before, but now it's time to come public with everything. And this is the best course of action for me, considering everything that's happened to me over the past number of years. I think this is the safest course of action for everybody concerned, and this is definitely the right thing to do. On these CDs is contained frequencies. These frequencies are what is downloaded into the receivers that are in the brains of these non-human cybernetic units. So it tells them it's an arming code, there's disarming codes, there's primers, there's triggers, there's untriggers, there's things to placate them and things to aggravate them. So there's lots of different variations of these frequencies. And instead of using even though it's still a binary and it can be used if it gets into the wrong hands, it's very, very difficult for enemy combatants to actually take this and make head and tail of it. They can't use it in a way that's going to harm the system. The only way they could do it is if they strap one of those guys to their chair and then feed that into them. And even then, do we know if just playing the CD is going to work, or if there's another piece of equipment which is possible, is an annex to that goes straight into the core bank of the receiver? I can't tell you that because I don't. That was never disclosed to me. But the frequencies are very potent. I have listened to a few of them myself, and hopefully James will be able to get them out so everyone can hear them. James Caswell, Michael Prince. My feelings on that whole scenario and subject. James Caswell took a bunch of people that some had things to do with him, some interviewed him, some had nothing to do with him. We had Kathy Buckaloo, I know she won't mind her name being used, she was placed on his droned list of individuals. And Tamara Natvidad, and so was James Ring. James Ring was also placed on that list of droned individuals. And Tamara Natvidad is just a person that does the written side of Kathy's show. That's all she did. And because she refused James's advances when he tried to come on to her over a few messages, she was placed on the drones list. It seemed like anybody that disagreed with James or didn't want to basically follow his lead or believe what he was saying was a droned individual. So my take on the whole James Casbolt thing is, I think that in the beginning when he came out, he had some very good information. I believe, from what I am told, he was telling a dead man story, a gentleman that he came upon and was just repeating the information that was told. However, James was very good at giving names, giving places, putting himself in the position, living the moment. But I believe he fell in love with his own fantasy. I believe he is a serial fantasist. From what I hear, he's in prison now, and he's going to be spending the next few years in prison because he's threatened a number of people. He threatened myself, he threatened my family. He's in prison now for the best part of 4 years for threatening another person, a female individual that he took pictures of and placed them online. He also did this to the woman he was married to at the time. And because he's partaken in a lot of self-destructive activities, he's now paying the price for it. I don't believe that mentally he's altogether in the head correct. I don't think he's right. I think he's had a mental break, and I do honestly believe that he needs some serious therapy. It's easy to want to believe James Casbolt's story. He's charismatic. He's a very cool individual. He looks the part. He plays the part well. People want to believe him. When he first came out, I wanted to believe him. I was his friend for many years until he threatened to gut my daughter. And that wasn't the correct thing to do. He did since email me. He apologized for that. He's apologized for a lot, but there comes a point when it's not enough. So when it comes to James Casbolt, he's going to have to pay for what he's done. And that's all I want to say about him.